Hello everybody, welcome to the Conception channel. I'm Spence Pentland, and today we're going to jump into two of the most popular videos on YouTube in regards to the improvement of male fertility or sperm. And these are both done by Dr. Jesse Mills. He's an MD and a urologist from UCLA urology department. So the information he delivers is fantastic, but I'm going to try and distill it down so there's pearls that you can take away today quickly and start implementing into your life and have a better understanding of what he speaks to in regards to male fertility. So I love how he starts right off the bat, Prospective Dad Lifestyle 101, and eat, move, sleep. So diet, exercise, and sleep. And I emphasize those things. There's 6 principles to overall health and fertility that I emphasize. Those are 3. The only 3 that may be more important are connection to the world, loved ones, breathing, and water. So I love how he starts here. I think he's nailing it. And as far as diet, he speaks to it being important to have a diet rich in fresh, dark, leafy vegetables and lots of fruits, higher protein. And I agree with that, especially because I recommend men using heavier resistance exercise to boost testosterone and sperm count. And when you're tearing down the muscles like that, you need full amino acid profiles to help repair. He goes on to talk about polyunsaturated fatty acids, which are important. He emphasizes tree nuts. I think omega-3 high in, or primarily fish oil, is easiest for the body to translate into what we need, particularly products higher in EPA for inflammation and to produce, or for the cholesterol to produce the sex hormones that we need is important. So basically, bottom line, you are what you eat. Your sperm is what you eat. If it's healthy for a man, he says it's probably healthy for the sperm. So kind of just step into a healthier diet. I mean, he puts it very plainly. And he touches on obesity here, but he does it more in the exercise portion, which we'll just jump to quickly. And I like what he says here about moving or exercise. He's like, actually, it's one slide back. He says, once or twice a week, that's not enough. And couldn't agree more. But I want to break that down a little bit. If you're a construction worker, once, twice a week is probably enough, unless you're the foreman. But if you're like most men these days, primarily in sedentary work, or and then go home and sit more, it's important that you get out and get on a sweat, get your heart rate up, improve circulation. And I'm going to emphasize again resistance, heavier weights to produce the testosterone and help with sperm count. He speaks to the obesity, and this links to the sedentary life, that obesity causes decreased testosterone and increased scrotal temperatures. So heat is the number 1 enemy of sperm. That's why hot tubs, infrared saunas are a no. But if you have a belly and you've got fat on your thighs and you're sitting a lot, there's just going to be an increased temperature, and this is how he extrapolates primarily how obesity connects to lower sperm counts. So important there. So exercise more, get out more, 3-4 times a week is important. And then he goes on here to talk about sleep. So we know that when we sleep as men, we recharge. He puts it here as we recharge our pituitary gland, and our pituitary gland produces and sends the hormones to our testes to produce sperm. So important to sleep. I mean, just our overall hormonal balance is unbelievably important and related to overall health, longevity, but here more in particular, fertility. So I love that he emphasizes sleep, in the words of paraphrasing Dr. Matthew Walker from Berkeley, sleep research and neuroscience there. Whatever the biological function, sleep plays an imperative role in its optimization. So couldn't agree more and so glad that he emphasized sleep. And he says over 6 hours, I'm emphasizing, I'd like to emphasize shooting for 8. But and then he goes on here to talk about advanced sperm diagnostics, which is great. I love that he emphasizes reactive oxygen species, which are caused by regular everyday life, breathing, but primarily by toxins and unhealthy lifestyles. It's going to raise those levels that put stress on the sperm, in particular, damage the sperm membranes. And that's where omega-3 or polyunsaturated fatty acids come in. Sperm membranes are made of fat. And he also talks about DNA fragmentation testing, which is if a couple's experiencing unexplained infertility or recurrent pregnancy loss, he recommends this test as a way to understand maybe what's happening and how it could be connected to the sperm. Two things to help with the sperm DNA fragmentation really quickly: ejaculate more. More often you ejaculate, the lower your sperm DNA fragmentation rates are in some research that I've seen. But he talks about sperm extraction. So the sperm inside your testes versus the sperm that's ejaculated is of higher quality, or in particular, the sperm DNA fragmentation rate is lower. So extracted sperm is better. So that's not something, many men maybe want to hear, but it may be an option to get better sperm. Then he goes on here to talk about something that is near and dear to my heart: vitamins that could help. In various combinations could improve sperm parameters. He's pretty adamant about this, and reactive oxygen species and sperm DNA fragmentation have been shown to react well to antioxidants, and in particular, some of these in here have antioxidant properties. So at Instill, the supplement that I've developed, Abundance, contains a lot of these, and then a couple others that I would add. But I love his list. It's a fantastic list, and anyone wanting to improve their sperm should at the very least get on these. Or if you want a bit more of an individualized recommendation, talk to myself or someone like Dr. Jesse or someone else you trust. There's lots of data that exists on these, so get onto these prenatal male fertility supplements. Then he jumps into some medications that he would use, like Clomid, maybe HCG, erectile dysfunction pills, to help. A lot of couples experience, sexual dysfunction, and in the male, erectile dysfunction, premature ejaculation. These things just and that can help, be the crutch to get you, going again. And some of these drugs may or may not work. Clomiphene is one to try. It can help improve sperm production. I've seen it in men. And especially if men are on testosterone or some sort of growth hormone or something, they got to come off that otherwise their sperm, won't be viable for, most often at least, for pregnancy. Clomid, HCG, these things might be able to be an alternative to keeping certain levels of testosterone up without the detrimental effect to the sperm. He goes on here to talk quickly about surgeries. So if you should be checked. Do you have a varicocele? If you do, it should be repaired, especially if you have been trying and unsuccessfully for a period of time. Sperm extraction, as we spoke of, might be if there's sexual dysfunction, if there's ejaculatory issues, if there's scarring from old disease or mumps or something, if there's azoospermia, there's no sperm in the ejaculate. There or sperm DNA fragmentation rate, like we said before, is high. Sperm extraction might be a good option. Vasectomy reversal is obvious, but that may also kind of circle back to sperm extraction. So there's some procedures that could help, and if someone's confident, urologist is confident and works with reproductive health a lot, it might be, it's get in there, get a referral, get them to check you out. He goes on to talk about timeline a little bit here, which I appreciate. It takes time to work. How long does it take to make sperm? It takes time, for spermatogenesis, or the production of sperm. So once you start implementing some of these things, it's important to give it some time. This is an important point he touches on here. Is binge drinking 5 to 6 drinks at a time can impair sperm production for months. So extreme moderation, and I'm in the school, if you've been trying for a long time, cut it out. Your liver will thank you. Inflammation will drop. Just so many things. You'll regain control of addiction if it is there, or if it is in your family. It's always good to take a break from anything that we do. He goes on to talk about radiation here, 30, which I can appreciate. He mostly speaks to laptop, of course, the heat is, as we said before, #1 enemy of sperm. But do iPhones, etc. He cites a study here that iPhone use showed decreased sperm. I think it was 4 hours or more a day. If a man uses, there was poor sperm. But mostly, if you're on a laptop or you're on a phone a lot, you're probably sedentary, and that's going to play a role as well. But the microwaves, sure, the Wi-Fi, the data, cellular data the cellular signal, the microwaves are going to be cooking things. So if you keep your cell phone in your pocket, it could be cooking your balls, and you might want to, find a different way to carry it around, or put it on airplane as much as possible. And then finally, entertainingly, in a sense, he answers a question from someone, and he speaks to oysters. It could help with sperm production, most likely because they're so high in zinc, and zinc may help with the testosterone, but it's also an aphrodisiac, or some kind of sexual enhancer. So there's some superfoods that people should look into, and the seafoods are high in the PUFAs, polyunsaturated fatty acids, or omega-3s, which are good for the sperm membrane, as well, as we discussed earlier. So this is a summary of this video. Then he has one other here that he speaks to. Just a couple, some of these things overlap, that's for sure, like diet, etc. But he speaks to, emphasizes keeping your testicles cool. Heat, the #1 enemy of sperm, so literally hanging out as much as you can. But one other thing, he says a little bit of coffee might help with sperm motility, so any of the coffee drinkers out there should be happy with that. Anyway, thanks, Jesse. Appreciate these videos. Keep them coming.